Hello everyone, I'm Matt Williamson. How's it going on this fine Monday? I think that's when I'm recording. And you'll probably be listening on Tuesday, which is cut down day. I will respond to the final roster after it is out, so I wanted to get you one before that. Yesterday I kind of speculated on the final roster, and it sounds as though, from very good sources, that the quarterback situation, and this is something I agree with, that they will make Skylar Thompson the third quarterback, and Howard will go on injured reserve. And I think that's the right move, considering that way you get to keep them both, you know. And I'm not saying Skylar Thompson's great. I mean, Howard is worth more to this organization than Thompson, big picture, for sure. But who would you rather line up and play with today if it got to that point? If you had two injuries and you had to win a game, I think the answer is clearly Thompson. Just because Howard hasn't played enough. You just don't know. You can't just throw him out there and hope he does okay the first time he ever plays. So I'm absolutely cool with that. It's kind of unfortunate. I would love to see Howard go to script and play all the snaps that we wanted, but that's not the way it worked. And we shall see him again, by all accounts, next training camp, next mini camp, and go from there. So I'm fine with that situation. Skylar played quite well. He's going to be in that. Either one would be inactive on game day either way. But if Rodgers were to miss time, who are you more comfortable with as your two behind Rudolph? And I definitely think he is the two behind Rudolph. Another note that came out today. It sounds as though Highsmith is going to be ready for week 1. So I just wanted to talk about that real quick, and then I got a bigger picture thing to discuss here to finish up the pod. But good news. I was a little concerned about that. I guess I'm not shocked either way, but they were a little non-committal on Herbig, and Highsmith is definitely good news. So, very good news on Highsmith. Obviously a key component. I assume he'll play his normal amount of snaps, although week 1, sometimes guys, anyway, will rotate in and out. I think tomorrow will be interesting. If they keep a 5th edge guy, Liao or whomever, does that mean Herbig is questionable for week 1? Maybe it does. We'll respond to that when it happens. But we'll see on Herbig. But good news on Highsmith. Just wanted to get that out there. Okay, the crux of today's podcast is Jakobi Meyers. Right before I hit record, it became official that he requested a trade from the Raiders. We've talked a lot over the last 2 years about wide receivers and trades and blah, blah, blah. And coincidentally, since we talked last, Terry McLaurin signed an extension for basically DK Metcalf type numbers. He is off the block. I think Meyers is perfect, though. So he's just under 27 years old. He's 28.7 years old right now. He was drafted in 2019. He's 6'2"-ish, 200-ish pounds. Often considered just a slot, but that is definitely a misnomer. He did more slot than outside work when he was with the Patriots early in his career. But since joining the Raiders, it's basically been a 2-to-1 ratio in terms of outside versus in. Let me just want to double check here. Last year, he had 299 slot alignments versus 591 outside. And that's basically how it was the year before as well. So he's definitely capable of lining up outside, which I think is absolutely important for. I don't want a slot only if they add a receiver, and I want someone with some physicality and some size. He will block. He'll definitely go over the middle. He'll do the dirty work stuff. He will do the slot near the line of scrimmage stuff, as mentioned. But he can win against press coverage and man coverage and outside stuff too. And speaking of two, I think that's perfect in terms of your investment in the position, because I really think he's almost the definition of an NFL number 2 receiver. If McLaurin was here, not that it's a bad thing to have 2 1s, of course. I mean, the Bengals don't mind. the Dolphins don't mind, etc. But it'd be pretty clear what the pecking order is. DK would get more money than Meyers. We'll talk about the money in a minute here. He would be ahead of him on the chart. Meyers is a precise route runner that I think would be very Aaron Rodgers friendly. I think he'd be a very welcome addition to next year's first round pick as a real quality pair of veteran receivers with some youth behind them and some speed. Maybe even draft another one in the third round or whatever. We'll figure that out later. But I think this makes you a much better football team. So speaking of contract, his cap hit this year is just under $15 million. He wants an extension, though. Now, I don't think an extension for Meyers would be anywhere close to Metcalf or McLaurin, for that matter. I think it's probably two-thirds that. I think he's a $20 million a year player. Now, you can move that around. You extend him when you make the deal. It sounds as if the Raiders are not interested in extending him. I don't know the reason why, but it is a totally new regime there. Bowers is going to be, of course, their leading target getter. And I think they want to push the ball downfield with speed. This Thornton kid, they love that they drafted. They also drafted Jack Besh, so they did draft 2 receivers. I'm not exactly sure what the impasse is in Vegas. But this is the type of player that I think is perfect, where he's definitely better than the Gabe Davises and the Romeo Doubs and some of the other names we've thrown out there. But he's not the McLaurin-like investment. I think the Steelers should be very active in this conversation, if, in fact, he's on the market, which it sounds like he is. Or at least has requested a trade. You never know exactly how that works. What would he cost? I think it's like a 4th-round pick. Maybe a 3rd. And you get something of a 6th back or something like that. By no means does he cost a 1st. I think by no means does he cost a 2nd. I think it's in that neighborhood. And knowing the Steelers and how they do things, it'd probably be a couple picks and a punter or something crazy for Meyers. And, a 4th and a punter or something weird like that. I'm making up the punter thing. Who knows? But I think this is a legit option that should be heavily explored and pursued with some aggression. I mean, he is a productive player, moves the chains, tough, team guy. I think he'd fit in real well and complement that wide receiver room very well. He's much different than Metcalf. He's much different than Austin, Wilson, Miller, etc. Plug in your 2, and then all of a sudden you got a pretty darn good group of skill guys, of pass catchers. Those three tight ends, Metcalf, Meyers, and then Wilson/Austin are pretty good 3 and 4. They're not a pretty good 2 and 3. They're a pretty good 3 and 4. I think Jakobi Meyers is somebody that they should absolutely pursue. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk about the 53 tomorrow.